Hello guys, what you're about to watch is a highlight from yesterday night in which I was playing Devil May Cry 3, and at some point or another I decided to do Killer B, which would side switch, prop, and finally a high time, both prop and high time launching. So this was a double launch setup that is something that other players have done. But I've been putting it off a lot because I thought that it would be difficult to learn as well as difficult to implement mid-gameplay, and I wanted to focus a lot on other stuff before I reached that point. However, during the stream I got a little bit bored and I thought, you know what would be fun? To do a little experiment as to how I might be able to present this to somebody. I just wanted to show like the process behind developing a combo with the math involved. This is not really a tutorial because a tutorial would be much more orderly and it wouldn't start off with a double launch setup. Double launch setups are not exactly the most complex thing in the world, and really everything involving the math in Devil May Cry can be summed up with just a few rule sets and just addition or subtraction, whatever way you kind of view it as. However, it can be a little bit annoying to explain all this and explain it in a way that a beginner would understand. So this is definitely not a tutorial. This is more of an example of how somebody may come up with a double launch setup or a Stunlaunch setup. In reality, even though it took like 30 minutes to explain all this and to talk about other things, it might take you, if you have the practice, maybe like 10 minutes at most. I don't know. Anyways, apologies for anybody who's watching the stream live. I was a bit messy. I was going back and forth between notepads and stuff, and I kept deleting stuff because I think that it wasn't going as planned, and so I just got a little bit, But also, I apologize because I kept muting my mic by accident. When I was typing in Notepad, I was using a hotkey by accident that, again, muted my mic. So what you're about to watch is basically a summary of what I came up with. A bit later into the stream I actually tried to test the setup in-game, and a bit after that I kind of wandered off and decided to make a double launch setup without actually doing the exact math in Notepad, just to show that this sort of stuff isn't really as rigid as it might seem. Anyways, enjoy a half an hour of slightly edited footage for your convenience about how somebody just does random number stuff in-game. SE stands for stun counter. DC stands for displacement counter. These two TLs that you see here stand for the total amount dealt at that point of the combo. So this is a fighting game analogy that I'm going to give. When you play a fighting game, it usually gives you an option to show the damage that you dealt in practice mode. So each move does a certain amount of damage, but in the combo it also gives you the amount of damage you did so far in that combo. And so TL is that. TL is the amount of damage, quote unquote, that you did so far in the combo. But DC and SE means the amount of stun or displacement that you did so far in the amount of stun or displacement that you did per move. Okay. If I wanted to be accurate, I should have just changed this to like M to indicate the move, because the stun counter is just like the bar. So don't take this too literally. Is basically what I'm trying to say. But whatever. So this is the start of the combo, right? Everything is a 0. Everything is at 0 because beforehand we did some sequence of attacks that caused us to launch the enemy from the ground, and the only way you can launch an enemy from the ground is to break the displacement counter. Once you destroy the displacement counter, once you reset it rather, everything resets to 0. What this means is that every time you see somebody launch an enemy from the ground, you start from a blank slate. So everything starts from 0. This is basically like we did a launch and everything is at 0. You get a blank slate. Now I started off the combo by doing hammer, and I do it twice, but let's focus on the first row of hammer. Hammer does 20 points of stun, and so far in the combo we did 20 points of stun total. It does 20 points of displacement, and so far in the combo we did 20 points total of displacement. We do another hammer, it's 20 points of stun, right? And 20 points of displacement. So 20 plus 20 equals 40. Or you can see it as 20 plus 20 equals 40. 20 plus 20 equals 40. The reason we don't want to do another hammer, right, is because if we do another hammer, it'll be 40 plus 20, and we would get 60. At 60, it would mean that it would break the displacement counter and it will knock down the enemy, and we don't want that. Because then we're just restarting from 0 all the way again, and it's stupid. So we don't do anything that is a hammer that deals 20 points of displacement or more. At this point, we're just trying to do only stun. And so Killer B does only stun. It does not knock down, it does not knock back, it does not launch. Killer B does 20 points of stun. 20 plus 20 plus 20 is 60. So we actually reach 60. And 60 is the special number here because we're doing this combo against a Sloth. A Sloth has 60 points of displacement and 60 points of stun resistance. And so you can imagine this like as a damage, right? A Sloth has 60 points of health, and so once you reach 60 points of damage total or more, the move that you reach it with will kill the enemy. But in this case, it doesn't kill the enemy, we just stun the enemy. And so when you see this exclamation mark, that's my little symbol right now to hint that we reset the counter. And so when you reach 60 or above, the stun counter resets. But the stun counter does not reset the displacement counter. So you get to 0 here because Killer B does 0 points of displacement. And so 20 plus 20 plus 0 equals 40. It's still 40. And so here I label it stun reset because this is the move that resets the stun counter. And so after the reset, the total amount of stun is 0. The total amount of displacement is still 40. So this is like the first major part. Now I do Killer B again. I jump cancel Killer B. I'm not gonna like explain like every little like jump cancel that I do in between, but just like in between these two Killer Bs was the jump cancel. Don't worry about it. It deals 20 points of stun again. And since we started from 0, we get a total of 0 points of stun total. It doesn't do any displacement. That means that we're gonna be stuck with 40 again. Yeah, this is the first hit of Rebellion combo. In theory, I'm trying to do this before the enemy hits the ground. The enemy in this whole string does not hit the ground once. This is in theory. In execution, I don't know. I don't know how the physics is gonna act or whatever, so it's fine. Killer B, again, 20 points of stun, 20 points total. Since it doesn't deal any displacement, it's just stuck at 40. Rebellion. It only deals stun. It doesn't deal any displacement, again, because it doesn't knock back, launch, or knock down. It's 12 points of stun. 12 plus 20 equals 32. So 32 total points of stun. Again, 0, 6 at 40. Now we got prop shredder. Or rather prop, if you want to use a DMC4 terminology. This is the part that launches the enemy. This is the first part of prop shredder. And so prop shredder hits 3 times. In terms of stun, each hit deals 12. In terms of displacement, each hit deals 4. So 3 indicates the amount of hits, times 12, which is the amount of stun per hit, is 32 total. 36 total. And so we do 20 plus 12 plus 36. This is in total of 68. This is more than enough, right? This is why I put the exclamation mark. Exclamation mark means it resets the counter. And so when it resets the counter, it resets only the stun counter back to 0. However, again, the total is 12. So 3 hits for the displacement counter. 3 hits. Each hit is worth 4, so we got a total of 12. Now, as you see, we only did like 20, until we get 40, and then we get 12. So 40 plus 12 is 52. So after this reset, we get a clean slate. Our stun counter is back to 0. Our displacement counter total is 52. And again, like this is a stun reset, but since the stun counter was broken, if the enemy is in the air, anytime that the enemy is airborne and it gets reset stun wise by a launcher, it will always launch. So 2 things will happen in the stun counter. It'll either stun the enemy or launch the enemy, and it'll only launch the enemy if it's airborne. So this prop, we succeeded at making it launch. Now we get to the final move, which is the uppercut. We want to do an uppercut afterwards. The uppercut is worth 20. Stun counter is back to 0. Total is 20, but this doesn't matter We don't care about this because it's gonna be reset anyways. The displacement, uppercut, is a launcher, so it deals displacement. So it's 20 points of displacement. 20 plus 52 is 72. This is more than 60. This is more than enough. So it resets everything back to 0. And this is why I put displacement reset. So what does this mean? This means that when we broken the displacement counter, the displacement property takes effect. And what is the displacement property of uppercut? It's a launch. So that's a summary of what happened here. We did hammer. We did another hammer. And so the total, they're both even at this point. The total for stun, the total for displacement is 40. We do killer B. Killer B only does stun. It doesn't do displacement. So this is where it kind of like desynchronizes with each other. Here we had like 20, 20, 40, 40, and then we have 60, 40. It desynchronized. The killer B stuns, and we do jump cancel. We do another killer B. Again, it doesn't deal any displacement, so it still stays the same, this displacement counter. We do the first hit of rebellion. It also does only stun. We do prop. The prop will launch if the enemy is still airborne. And we added a little bit to the displacement counter. So the stun, we did a stun launch at reset again, stun counter. Then finally we do the uppercut. The uppercut will reset the displacement counter, which resets everything, and it also means that the uppercut will launch. So that's the summary of the math. But this is only theory. We're gonna test out if it actually works in the game, because again, we haven't taken into account the physics, we haven't taken into account how fast the enemy falls and all that. One final thing I want to note though, we could add a few stun only attacks. So like Ebony and Ivory is 1 point of stun. 1 point in the grand scheme of things in this setup is kind of insignificant. So for this first part here, we could actually add Ebony and Ivory if we please. And so I think I'm going to be adding Ebony and Ivory in between these two hammers. I'm not sure. I might even add Ebony and Ivory after this hammer. And the reason for that is that it might keep the enemy in the air for a bit longer, and that's kind of what we want. But for example's sake, let's add Ebony and Ivory here. So E and I shot. Ebony and Ivory only stuns, so it doesn't deal any stun. Any displacement. And so the displacement counter is still at 20, right? However, it deals 1 stun. And so the grand total is 21. Now you can see why this is insignificant, because later we're going to do a hammer. And so in theory it would be 41 total. And then we do another hammer. And it'll just be 61 total. So that doesn't impact our combo at all. So let's get rid of the Ebony and Ivory shot though. Let's just keep it simple. But that I just did that explanation to show you guys that adding an Ebony and Ivory shot or two, in a lot of cases it won't matter. It won't affect the combo mathematically. It can, however, it can, and in certain special cases, like for example, there's a combo that Blowhard did in his B-Style Tournament 5. The last combo that he did in this room, in this exact mission, I think. It was the last combo that he did where he actually did take into account every Ebony and Ivory shot to launch the enemy, to stun launch the enemy. So that is one example. Like, you can do the math yourself, but that is one example of Ebony and Ivory shots actually making a difference in the combo. But in this case, it won't make a difference. So I'm just putting that out there. If you see me add an Ebony and Ivory shot, it won't affect the math. So let's actually get working on the combo. So I want to show you guys something. Look at whenever I do Killer B, look at how the enemy reacts. Whenever I do it when he's airborne, look at how he reacts. And I just want you guys to ingrain this into your mind. he doesn't really change his descent. It's equivalent of an ebony and ivory shot. That's exactly what happened to his body when you did Killer B. Well, let's do it 3 times. I don't know if you saw that, but you can see his arms expanding a little bit. And that's when he's been stunned. Now remember when I said Killer B does 20 points of stun? I did 3 Killer Bs there. 3 times 20 equals 60. The 3rd Killer B actually stunned him. And this is why you see his arms expand. Why is this important? This is important because this, when you stun an enemy in the air and they do that animation, they descend slightly slower than they would with an ebony and ivory shot, or like the first 2 Killer Bs that you saw. So we'll do that again. We'll do that with DT this time. Oh shit. You see how he sort of stood there in the air for just a split second. So I just wanted to let you guys know that, because at one point in the comment we broke the stun counter with a Killer B based on the math. And so that might help us not lose too much hype. And I'm gonna do 2 hammers. And then a Killer B. I'm gonna jump cancel that Killer B. In fact, let me crop the text for you guys, because I want you guys to. And that should be something to keep track of. Hammer, hammer, Killer B, jump cancel, Killer B, rebellion, the first hit, prop, and uppercut. This is our basic combo formation. So you can feel like this. I am slightly worried that we won't have enough height. Probably won't have enough height. I'm going to this. We very likely won't have enough height. Ah, he's like, if it doesn't work, we're going to use the ledge to our advantage. Oh, yeah, I'm not Actually, let's arrange this differently. So I know that that the text says hammer, hammer, Killer B, but we can actually, like, this is the stun reset, right? But they all deal the same amount of stun. So we can actually like drag Killer B before hammer, and then do hammer twice, and then do another Killer B. We could do that, and I think that will be better. So we will start off with Killer B, then hammer, then another Killer B. We're just gonna slightly change it, but it doesn't change the math at all. Like right before our stun reset, or any reset, you can actually change the order of the moves in most cases. So it's completely fine. We're gonna change the order of the moves just a little bit. Okay, I might be wrong, right? Let's do it from his back. Maybe that'll be it. Bingo! Bingo! Okay, so I actually launched it with high time, but that means that, you know, if high time can launch it, uppercut will certainly launch it. Why is this? Because high time deals less displacement than uppercut. So uppercut is definitely gonna launch that. And you want to know why I said it might work from his back? I said that because why did I say that? Right. I think you can jump cancel a little bit better, like earlier with his back. Let me try to do it again from his front. Yeah, I think from his back is probably good. We got it. Congratulations, DK. You did it. But that was basically it, really. Um, Fortunately, we can't really do this setup from the front, but uh, but that's because like maybe you can, but it seems like you can jump cancel, like you can do Killer B very quickly. From behind him and hit him and jump cancel it. But if you're in front of him, you kind of have to be a little bit higher than him, and then do Killer B. And like, okay, so notice like when he launches for a bit and then he slows down and then falls. You want to do Killer B before he even reaches the peak of his jump. That way, when you actually connect Killer B, he's at the peak or near the peak of his jump, and that way you can have more time to do all that prop shredder shit before the enemy hits the ground. And it just so happens that I guess his hitbox is bigger from below, and it also allows you to jump cancel. So you want to do it quickly out of high time from behind him. Yeah, yeah. You see how low I was able to jump cancel that fool, the Starfall? I can't do that from in front of him. And so that's kind of like, this is a setup that kind of only works from behind the enemy. It could work from in front of the enemy and I could just be stupid, which is probably the case, to be fair. Yeah, it works from in front. Okay, that's cool. Famous last words. Yeah, you could actually... You know what? I'm gonna probably highlight my explanation all the way to the point that I actually succeeded, so that you guys can maybe learn from this. Really, this is not a good way to like teach somebody this, right? So the main reason I decided to do this was I was thinking like I want to do a combo or like a double launch in which I side switch with Killer B. Then I do prop and then I do a side switch with that. I want to do a double launch. The first being the Stunlaunch with prop, and then the second being a displacement launch with Beast Uppercut. So that was the whole reason why I did this whole thing. I was just like, oh, you know, it would be fun, quote unquote fun, if I bored my viewers to death and did the math behind it, so that you guys can sort of see like the work that it sort of takes to do this stuff. A lot of this stuff though really can be just down to trial and error. Really, this is just like a nice little experimental shit that I just decided to do on the fly. Really, if I were to make a tutorial, I would start very simple. So for instance, I would say, and also I might be using that setup from now on. But like, let's say I do that, right? It launches the enemy. Every aerial rave is worth, every hit of aerial rave is worth 12. You do one hit of Helmbreaker, that's another 12. So 4 times 12 is, and I say 4 because I did 3 hits of aerial rave and then 1 hit of Helmbreaker. All of them were 12, so 4 times 12 is 48. I need 12 more to reach 60. That 60 comes from the high time. But we were only using the stun counter there. So so I would start off with something very simple like that, and anyone can do this. This doesn't require any jump canceling. You can do this. The hardest part there for, I guess, the newer player would be to time the double trigger explosion, because you need that double trigger. So you do high time. You do high time with double trigger explosion, the enemy falls just slightly slower, and that slightly slower stuff is useful for being able to connect high time before the enemy lands. Because remember, if you do a stun launch, you need the enemy to be airborne in order to do the stun launch. I would start off with something simple like that in a tutorial. I wouldn't do anything of what I did in this little experiment that I just did. I don't know how much use, and I'm pretty sure like virtually no one will get any use from it, but it's just like a little thing to show that, yeah, this is kind of how like people sort of make combos. And I say kind of because, again, like a lot of it is trial and error. And the reason I say trial and error is because we sort of over time catch up to like little patterns and sort of things that might more likely than not work out. For the most part, people don't actually write the math down all the time. We might write the math down for like very sort of subtle little things here and there, and to like experiment in our heads in theory how something may or may not work. But when you're doing like as you've seen, like this combo could have easily not worked out. It is super tight. Or maybe it seems super tight because I'm just learning it, but over time maybe it will become very easy. But this combo could have easily failed. And so that's why people like test things in game rather than writing their stuff on Notepad and have all that math go in vain. Ultimately, though, you can just make subtle changes to the combo chain, and with the math still being useful. But for the most part, we do a lot of the calculations in our heads, and we don't need to do like very meticulous calculating because we already sort of see like subtle little patterns here and there that we can ignore. Like as I said earlier that I could add a bunch of Ebony and Ivory shots without it affecting the combo, and so when somebody's making a combo, oftentimes they might add an Ebony and Ivory shot, and they know that Ebony and Ivory shot will more likely than not affect the combo at all. So that's like one example of ways we kind of simplify things in our head. But really, like this is stun launch, right? This is a double launch, and when you see double launches in gameplay, they were usually like the math was usually done way ahead of time, and it wasn't really done by trial and error. You can still do stuff like that by trial and error, but double launches like that are planned. So here's another double launch that I have. That launches twice. That's a complete setup. That's like in DMC4 when you do high time, prop shredder, and then air trick. It's just that, but for DMC3. Or this is another stun launch. This is another one. The math is pretty much exactly the same. It's just ordered differently. Let me think of a good. But we do sort of like those things. We may have done the math in the past, but once we get it, you don't have to worry about it at all. And sometimes it's just trial and error. So I'm gonna try to do one trial and error right now. And I'm not using the notepad or anything. I'm sort of keeping track of some of the values in my head, but I'm more likely than not. I'm not concentrating too much on the math. So. Oh, okay, so. Okay, so I'm gonna add one more hit to that because I noticed that one of the hits of Prop Shredder launched, but it launched too early, so I'm gonna like do, I guess. Okay, we got it. Oh, that didn't knock. Oh yeah, I did something stupid. Right. Easy stun launch. I didn't even like really take into account the math that I just showed you guys. So this is kind of like based on trial and error. So you don't really need to do the math. But on some level, you have to be aware of the concepts that I'm talking about. The concepts, the main concepts being knowing that you want to do a stun launch first, then you want to do displacement launch second. And the reason for that is because the stun launch, the counter resets only for the stun. But the displacement launch only resets for, well, it resets for both of them. And so what does this mean? Unless you have a launcher that does 60 points of stun, you're not going to launch it afterwards immediately with another launcher. So you need to do the stun launch first and the displacement launch. So that sort of stuff you have to keep in mind. And so like something like that, it's a concept that I don't really have to worry too much about mathematically. Again, you see certain patterns over time, and so those are also at play. In fact, you can order this all anywhere you want. So if I remember correctly, it was one aerial rave, hammer. So from what I can think of right now, it's 2 aerial raves. No, a combination, a total of 4 aerial raves, one helmbreaker, and 1 hammer. So 2 aerial, total of 4 aerial raves, 1 hammer, 1 helmbreaker, and you can order that whatever way you want. And then of course after that there's another helmbreaker, and that helmbreaker reaches the ground. So you can order, like before that helmbreaker that reaches the ground, you can order those moves in whatever way you want. And it doesn't matter, like the math is gonna be the same. See, I did 4 aerial rays first. Hammer and helmbreaker, it doesn't matter. I think this is an interesting case where the ebony and ivory shots do matter a little bit. I'm gonna test it again. Ah, fuck. Yeah, this is a rare case where the ebony and ivory shots do matter, actually. I don't know if you were here, Juno, but I learned the Stunlaunch that I did on stream. Or a double launch, rather. And I did the math on stream so that everybody can see the process it is, sort of. The thing, though, is that, like, for the prop shredder thing, that's something that you can do out of trial and error, but it is actually probably a good idea for something like prop shredder, where every hit is 12 points of stun and 4 points of displacement. That's kind of like a rare thing that you see in this game, where the number isn't the same for displacement and stun when it comes to displacement attacks. That's rare. So whenever you're doing a combo with like that, or a shotgun usage, or one where you're using a lot of ebony and ivory, those are the combos where actually writing things down on paper will be probably a better idea than doing things by trial and error. But for the most part, you're gonna be doing trial and error once you start getting the hang of the patterns that you see, or like sort of a lot of this thing kind of becomes ingrained to the point where you don't really know why certain things feel like they will work, but you sort of do. So yeah.